Bhagavatam. Today we are going to be reading from the third canto, chapter 29. Today being Valentine's Day, I'd like to wish all of you a happy Valentine's Day. But I also want you to know that today is the topic we're going to cover is about love. And this is love that is of a much deeper and more profound quality than that which we call love. You see, love has many dimensions. And the love that we talk about in today's time is more the romantic love. And romantic love is something that has only been around a couple hundred years, maybe 300 at most. And it was the product of fiction writers who created this idea, and now it's become, well, very popular. And it's gone mainstream. In fact, it's been taken over by Hallmark and cards and chocolates and all kinds of things like that, as you well know. And, restaurant business is big on today, and people are out. And yet, there are millions of people who feel alone. It's not something that everyone feels loved. It's not a day on which everyone feels that they have that incredible feeling in their life that they all long for. And so it's proven to be, like many things in this world, good for some and not good for many. So this is the same thing that applies to religion. Religion has also been the cause, it started off with incredible intentions. It started off, the teachers of religion like Christ and Muhammad and Buddha and Krishna, they taught incredible things. And then people took them and distorted them. And in much the same way, we find that everything gets distorted. So you can't go out and blame those teachers and say it's their fault. It's about human beings and what they do and how they corrupt systems and how they corrupt everything, right? They corrupt, science, technology, you name it. Everything's been taken and corrupted into something based on somebody's selfish, greedy, manipulative, controlling desires to want to have more. So behind everything you'll find in this world, the best of things even, there is greed, there is control, there is power. And it's the world we live in. So it's very important to discern and take out the good from where it is and leave the rest. A lot of us will reject, for example, religion, or will reject God, or will reject love, or will reject whatever it is where we've seen a misuse of that thing. But there's a saying, at least in America, to take the baby out of the bathwater. When you're throwing the bathwater, the dirty water out, you don't throw the baby away with the bathwater, but rather you keep the baby. So in other words, you keep the good intent, you keep the goodness of that which is present in all that is good in this world. And there is so much that it's about time that we start focusing on that and getting past our skepticism, our feelings of being betrayed or let down or hurt or sad or whatever the case might be. We've seen this happen in every area of life. Marx started a revolution to try to change the world and make things equitable because he saw the businesses that had come up around his time controlling people, the workers, and trying to exploit them. So he tried to create a revolution. What happened? It became turned into communism. Christ taught about trying to have us love everyone, and what did people do? The church took it and made it into some way of trying to make everyone follow them, or else they would be burnt on the stake or killed, and killed millions of people as a result. And science, on the other hand, was supposed to give us a better world, but much of what they did led to the formation of nuclear bombs and pollution and climate catastrophe. So it's really been a sad turn of events where good turns into evil, and we hope we can take some of that and turn it back into good. So in the same way, we'll see here that we're going to explore this idea today through the Bhagavatam, and we're going to take a look at how the Bhagavatam shows us to find a different kind of love, a deeper kind of love, a love that involves loving everything and everyone. So you're going to come across some very incredible wisdom, and we'll get started in just a moment. So in the Bhagavatam, as you know, we've been talking about the discussions between, the teachings of Kapila to his mother Devahuti. And I think I'll pull up that scene once again. You've seen it a few times if you've been watching the earlier episodes, but here it is. So Kapila, the son, is speaking with his mother Devahuti and instructing her in the ways of yoga. And of all the yogas, he emphasizes bhakti, a devotional yoga. That is a devotion to God, a love of God, as was taught by so many of the teachers who came in this world. They all talked about loving God. And what that means has definitely been through a lot. What does it mean to love God? Is it about loving some old man in the sky, or is it loving, some deity in a temple? No, Kapila is going to give us a very different picture. And I hope you'll pay attention and you'll follow through there. Meanwhile, if you have any questions, please write them in the comments or in the chat, whether you're coming in from Zoom or you're on YouTube, one way or the other. Please be alert to any questions that you might have, because questions come up and questions are so important. This is not a process that we want you to follow blindly. This is not a process we want you to believe implicitly. This is rather a process that we want you to question and challenge and try to understand and go deeper into, because the more you question it, the more you'll get out of it. So be clear about that. Take the questions that come to your mind. Remember, no question is a bad question. They're all welcome and all good, right? So with that, let's start reading from what Kapila is saying and how we can learn from it. See, the idea here is to tap into ancient wisdom that has been around thousands of years. And we need that in today's time. As the age of Kali progresses, this time that we're living in, people are going further and further away from a deeper understanding of the truth. And the result of which is that we're finding ourselves more and more lost. And that lost feeling within us leads to depression, leads to anxiety, leads to a disconnect with ourselves. And as a result of which, then our energies get low and our hopes get less. And we find ourselves struggling with the world. So let's get started. Devahuti inquires from Kapila. She says, please tell me more. So this is the attitude of a devotee. Tell me more. Eager, hungry, thirsty, longing to know more. Tell me more about bhakti or devotion. So with this term, bhakti refers to bhakti yoga or devotional yoga. And devotion is very powerful in anything that we do, whether you're devoted to your work, whether you're devoted to, let's say, to your career or your sport or to your family, or to being fit or being healthy. Whatever you devote yourself to, you will become very good at that. And the ultimate devotion is devotion to God. And what that devotion looks like is what we're going to understand over here. So Devahuti wants to know, tell me more about bhakti or devotion to God, which is the ultimate goal of philosophy and spirituality. So here again, she's making a very interesting point that this devotion is the ultimate goal of philosophy and spirituality. Because see, it's about spirituality in action. It's not just about intellectual understanding. It's about taking it and applying our spirituality in a way that is concrete and real and that has tangible results. She says, please also describe eternal time and the continual process of birth and death. For by hearing of such calamities, we may become detached from the activities of this world. That's a topic most of us don't want to talk about, the continual process of birth and death. When we are faced with death, it's like a big shock. It comes to us as if like, wait a minute, this wasn't supposed to happen. But no, that's not true. This is what was supposed to happen. This was supposed to happen the moment someone is born. With every birth is born a death. It's there, right there. It's guaranteed. And so the more we hear about it, the more we hear about the process of death, and the more we realize that each one of us comes back after death, the more fearless we become. And the more we realize we no longer need to live our lives from a place of fear, of survival, of trying to get by, of just do what's required to try and hoard as much money as possible so that this generation and the next and the next and the next can have enough money. This vision, this dream, this hope is the cause of this endless pursuit that we see in the world today of people just chasing more and more and more and more. If you ask them why are you chasing more? They say, well, so my next generation can have it. And then the generation after them can have plenty as well. Well, you know what? If they don't struggle to get what you've earned in this life, if they don't learn the tools, if they don't learn what the value of the money you're generating in this life by being an entrepreneur, a business person, whatever it might be, they're not going to know how to use it even. Forget earn it, they won't know even how to use it. They will just blow it up. And what you'll be left with is nothing. You have basically indulged them and spoiled them. It hasn't been of any value. So learning about the process of birth and death is one of the most important lessons that we will learn in life. And the more we hear about it, the more illuminated we become, the more enlightened we become. She then tells her son Kapila, she says, you are just like the sun, for you illuminate the darkness of the conditional life of living entities. Because their eyes of knowledge are not open, they are sleeping eternally in that darkness without your shelter. And therefore they are falsely engaged by the actions and reactions of their material activities. And they appear to be very fatigued. So you can see in these words her compassion. Her compassion is for all living entities. And she notices the struggle that people are having as a result of all their material activities, and as a result of being, when she says asleep eternally, she's referring to the illusion under which all of us live, the illusion of Maya, the illusion, well, that's the word they use in Sanskrit, and which really means that we are in this illusion going on and on and on, doing things without questioning them. And that's why questioning is so important. Question everything, challenge everything, including your own mind. And the more you challenge it, the more you realize it disappears. Even your mind, when you challenge it, when you question it, why are you saying what you're saying? Where does that information come from? Is it true? Can I be absolutely sure it's true? The more you challenge it like that, the more you'll find your mind starts to calm down. The more you challenge the ways of the world and the ways you have been taught, the more you'll find you're no longer chasing after the things that everybody else is. You've suddenly calmed down. And that's when the doors to spirituality open. So Kapila replies, he says, there are multifarious paths of bhakti. Bhakti again is devotion, devotional yoga, according to the qualities of the executor. So there are different paths according to the qualities of the person who is doing it. See, everybody's in a different state of mind, in a different state of consciousness. So he breaks it down to 4 different states. The first is in the mode of darkness, mode of ignorance. And in this state, a person will execute devotion, but it will be in an envious mood, or he'll be proud or violent or angry, and is a separatist. You see, you'll notice this happening to a lot of religious people. They are very proud of their religion. They are violent to the point of, anyone who doesn't follow it, they think that person is going to hell. And not only are they going to hell, but I'm going to personally send you to hell. They're angry. These are not the signs of a spiritually uplifted person. And they are separatists, which means that they try to separate themselves. My way is better than your way. That is not the way of spirit. This he calls bhakti or devotion or love of God in the mode of darkness. You are infected by the darkness of this world. Some might call it the devil or whatever else. I don't know. I'm not buying into that stuff. But what I want to say is that you're infected by a certain darkness that does not allow you to think clearly. It clouds your thinking. Then he says there is another kind, next level up, which is passion, the mode of passion. In this, one worships God, whether it's a temple or a church or anywhere else, but still remains a separatist. And they have a motive for material enjoyment and fame and opulence. You know, I've built this big old temple and I've built this church and it's in my name and I'm doing so much good for the world. Yeah, you're doing charity, you're doing good things apparently, but you're doing it with an agenda for wanting to prove how great you are, or for enjoyment, or for fame, right? All of this is, and at the same time a separatist. I am better than you. I am better than these other people. So this is, again, from a very egoic place. Then there is the mode of goodness. And in the mode of goodness, one worships the Supreme Godhead and offers the results of his activities. So in other words, whatever you do, you offer that activity do it as an offering to God. That whatever I do it for you. And such a person does this in order to free him or herself from the inebrities of karma. See, karma is binding to everyone. And so whatever you do, there will be a reaction. You do good, there will be a reaction. You do bad, there will be a reaction. The good reaction might be a good thing, but it will bind you to this world. So let's say that you did good deeds, and let's say your karma was that you came back and you now, in the next life, you had greater opportunities, nicer body, more material opulence. Well, those are pathways that will easily distract you from the path to God. It's not that money is bad. It's not that having a beautiful body is bad. And it's not that being intelligent is bad. None of these things are bad in and of themselves. But they have a tendency to distract you from the path. If you have your path clear and you know where you're going and what you want out of life, and that if what you want is truly liberation from this world, from the cycle of birth and death, then you will choose a path that frees you. Then you will think clearly. So that brings us to the next stage, and that is what is called pure devotion. In pure devotion, one's mind is at once attracted to hearing the transcendental name and qualities of the Supreme Godhead who is residing in everyone's heart. So hear what he's saying, that one is naturally, easily attracted to hearing about the transcendental name and qualities of the Supreme Godhead. In other words, you have an affinity and attraction. This is called ruchi in Sanskrit. It means you have developed a taste. You know, it's just like certain foods, you've got to develop a taste for them. And sometimes unhealthy foods are easier to develop a taste for, and healthier foods might be more difficult to develop a taste for. But when you develop a taste for something, or if you go to a different country and they have a different style of food and eating, it takes a while to develop a taste. Likewise with everything. But when you develop a taste, then that becomes very attractive. So he says here that when one's mind is at once attracted to hearing, see, attracted, the word attraction is here. Krishna, the word Krishna, the name for God, comes from this word, attraction, akarshit. We all seek something or someone that is attractive. People try to make products that are very attractive. If Apple makes a phone or they make a product, they want to make it very attractive and appealing. When you look for a partner, you look for someone who is very attractive, right? You have a home, you want it to be in a very beautiful surroundings. Again, attractiveness. Attractiveness comes from beauty, and beauty is the nature of God. So when one's mind is attracted to hearing the name and qualities of the Supreme Godhead, who is residing in everyone's heart, then in such a state of pure devotion, one easily overcomes the influence of the world and is situated in transcendence. See, just as one becomes attracted to a particular man or woman, and then their attraction becomes so intense that you're not interested in anybody else. That is true attraction, true love, true partnership. And the same happens with God, that when you are attracted in that way, then the influence of the world diminishes. Your interest in what is going on diminishes. You're not overcome by its influence. And because you are not overcome by the influence of the world, the natural result is you are situated in transcendence. Then he gives an example. Just as the water of the Ganges, the river Ganges, the Ganga, which comes from the Himalayas and flows naturally down towards the ocean. So just as the water of the Ganges flows naturally down towards the ocean, such devotional ecstasy, uninterrupted by any material condition, flows towards the Supreme Being. So it just carries you. When you go on a river like the Ganga, you just go with the flow. And if you went all the way with that flow, you would land up in the ocean. Similarly, if you develop that taste, that's all it takes, is developing the taste. And in developing a taste, sometimes a thing might taste bitter in the beginning. And it might feel uncomfortable in the beginning. But that's what is said in the Bhagavad Gita, that there is happiness which arises from the mode of ignorance, which appears to be pleasurable in the beginning, and which appears like nectar in the beginning, it says, and turns to poison in the end. And then there is happiness in the mode of goodness, which appears like poison in the beginning, but turns to nectar in the end. So similarly, when you have a discipline, let's say you're learning to ride a bicycle, or you're going to the gym, or anything else, it might seem difficult when you're learning a new skill. It seems difficult in the beginning. But as you go on and on, it gets easier, you get better, you get more skilled at it, and now it's effortless, and now you enjoy it. And the same thing happens with devotion. So when you develop that attraction, there is a natural flow towards God. You have developed a taste, you have developed a longing, a desire now, and it is something you can't, just like when you start walking every day or exercising, now you can't live without it, right? You want to do it every day. Or you fall in love with someone and you want to be with them every day as much as possible. Then Kapila continues, he says, a pure devotee, one who is in this pure state of devotion, does not accept any kind of liberation. This is very important to understand. A lot of people want to become free from suffering, because this world is full of suffering and they have every right to want to be free from suffering. But he says a pure devotee does not accept any kind of liberation, whether that liberation is ekatva or oneness. Everyone's very fascinated by the idea of oneness, becoming one with the divine, one with God, merging into the light. He says a pure devotee is not interested in that. Nor is he even interested in salokya mukti, which is being on the same planet as God. So a lot of folks, if you see in religion, they want to go to heaven and be with God. The devotee is not even interested in that. Or sarishti, having the same opulence as God. Or samipya, becoming a personal associate of God. Or sarupya, having the same form as God. They are not interested in any of it, even though it may be offered to them by God Himself. Prabhupada writes in the purport, a pure devotee does not accept these 5 kinds of liberation, nor does such a person hanker for material benefits, which are all insignificant in comparison with the spiritual gifts and blessings and benefits that they have gained. There was a young boy, Prahlad, who was 5 years old, who was being tormented by his father, Hiranyakashipu. And then Vishnu incarnated as Narsingha, half lion, half man. It's a long story. We'll go into it in the 7th canto. But when Narsingha had killed Hiranyakashipu, who was demonic in nature and was tormenting his son Prahlad, not only tormenting him, trying to kill him in so many ways, but Prahlad was not able to be killed, not able to be destroyed. So when Vishnu's incarnation, Narsingha, killed the father, Hiranyakashipu, the boy, Prahlad, was asked, what would you like? I would like to give you anything that you desire. And Prahlad, the young boy at the age of 5, said to Vishnu in the form of Narsingha, the half lion, half man, he said, I have seen that my father achieved all kinds of material benefits, and even the demigods were afraid of his opulence. But in a second, you have finished his life and all his material prosperity. So he says, I don't want anything. I don't want anything. Prabhupada writes in the purport, he says, for a devotee, there is no question of desiring any material or spiritual prosperity. He simply aspires to serve God, and that is his highest happiness. Think about that. We all seek happiness. We all seek love. But we haven't found out where is there a kind of happiness that is lasting, that is not temporary, because the happiness of this world isn't entirely temporary. I buy this new thing, a new TV, new house, a new car, whatever it might be, and yeah, after a little while it becomes normal. It doesn't make me happy anymore. It made me happy for a few minutes, a few hours, a few days, and that was it. And then I'm seeking the next thing, and the next, and the next, and the next. So there is no end to it. And so we're on a treadmill chasing the next thing. But here he talks about a happiness that one seeks nothing further, not material, not spiritual. It doesn't matter. You can't win over a devotee like that. So how do you get there? And then he gives a process. He says, execute your prescribed duties without attachment to the result. Now, what's your prescribed duty? Your prescribed duty is your guna and karma. Guna means your aptitude. Right? So what is your natural gifts? What are the natural qualities that you have? And working according to that. Because when you work according to your guna, your qualities, your aptitude, then you are most satisfied in what you're doing. You will do it for its own sake. It doesn't matter how much you earn from it. It doesn't matter how many people like you for it, whether they acknowledge you, whether you're famous. It does not matter. And so then you know you're in your prescribed duty, you're in your dharma, you're in that which is most natural for you. And your karma. So now, of course, it's about acting according to those qualities. You may have the qualities but do nothing about them. Then actually you begin to feel quite frustrated. Like if you were an artist and if you had the gift of painting, but you didn't paint, then you'd feel very disconnected with yourself and you would feel a sense of emptiness. And this happens to anyone who has a particular talent but doesn't use it. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says in chapter 9, text number 30, he says, even if one commits the most abominable action, suduracharo, durachar is an action that is not good, like really bad action, right? Sudurachar means a very abominable action. So even if one commits the most abominable action, if he is engaged in worshipping me without deviation, he is to be considered saintly, because such a person is properly situated in his determination. See, when we are determined to get to God, and we are determined, and then we act accordingly, we will gradually become purified and cleansed from within. And the qualities that we need to come to our destination will be given to us. That's how it works. It's like sometimes you try to learn a certain skill. You say, how will I ever be able to read or ride a bicycle or drive a car? In the beginning, it can sometimes seem frustrating when you learn a new skill. But somehow your body, your mind organizes itself to make it possible. And then, of course, if you go deeper into it, like runners, when they get into that flow state, you can get into that in almost anything. But it would not have seemed possible in the beginning. Yet with perseverance, we're able to get there. So Krishna provides us with what we need, preserves what we have, and provides what we need. So now Kapila is describing a process. He says, regularly see my statues in the temple, like the deities in the temple of Krishna and Radha. Touch my lotus feet and offer worshipable paraphernalia and prayer. And then he comes to the most important point. He says, see every living entity as spiritual. And he'll go on now to really explain this point, because there are many who will just worship in the temple. They'll think God is in the temple, God is in the church or the mosque or wherever else. But they forget that God is in every living entity. And this is where we get lost. In the purport, Prabhupada writes, he talks of two different kinds of people. The first one he refers to from the Bhagavad Gita. And he said, one who is truly learned is samadarshina. That means that person has equal vision, or equanimity one might say. But equal vision means he sees equally a very learned and intellectual and saintly Brahmin, a Shudra, a worker, a hog, a dog, and a cow. He does not see the body, which is only an outward dress. In other words, this person has a penetrative vision to see the soul of another being and to look past the covering of the material body. Most of us only see the body, and then we judge people accordingly and slot them into different things. But no, the real thing to develop is this samadrishti, this vision of equanimity, this vision of sameness, is to see the presence of God in everyone. That is an achievement. And that is what is so important. If you look at Christ's teaching to love thy neighbor as thyself, he wasn't teaching us. Of course, this was part of the commandments, but he emphasized it. Christ really emphasized that because he was teaching them that God is in everyone. And so you have got to learn to love everyone. That's the deeper understanding of this. But here it will be explained very well. So the first kind of person that he refers to is the Pandit. This is the real Pandit. There are a lot of people who go around calling them Pandit. Pandit means priest, and that's a shallow version of it. But real Pandit is this. One who is truly learned is this person who has this equal vision. In contrast, he talks about this other kind of person, the Prakrita Bhakta. Prakrita is Pandit and Prakrita. The Prakrita is a materialistic devotee. Such a person shows all respect to the deity, but does not see every living entity as part of the Supreme. Such a person is not on the spiritual platform, but rather in the lowest stage of devotion. We see here the example of Krishna. Take a good look. And you will see that he is there sitting with the cows and with the deer and the swans and the peacocks and playing with them. And you might be surprised as to why he might be doing this. Because he is not discriminating from one to the other. He is looking at them all the same. Here he is with the deer and the peacocks and playing to them his flute. And here's Krishna feeding the monkeys. He loves all of them, all creatures, all beings. Here he is with his friends, his buddies. They're eating and playing and enjoying times together. And then here he is accepting the love of his mother. See, in most religions, they talk about loving God, having God as your father. But in bhakti, in devotional yoga, we talk about God in all kinds of relationships. You can love God like the animals love Krishna, just like adoring him with their eyes and ears. But you can also love him by wanting to serve him, or as his friend, or as his mother and father. Right? You know what an incredible love parents have for their kids? So it's the same thing. When you have loved God as his parent, you have such an incredible relationship. So Krishna is accepting everybody's love. No matter how they want to love him, he accepts it. And you want to ask yourself, if you could love God any way possible, how would you like to love God? What kind of relationship would you like to have with God? As a mother and father? As a child, as a friend, as a buddy, or perhaps as a lover. There's Krishna with his lovers. All of the women of the town are in love with him. They're besotted in love with him. And there he is with Radha, his beloved. And if you'll notice here, he's braiding her hair, putting flowers in her hair. He has no arrogance, oh, I'm God, and you need to worship me. He's worshiping her. He's loving her. He's completely devoted to her. This is how he is with all of us. He's as devoted to us as we are to him. Such a beautiful way of loving. So the question really is, if you want to find the highest, the greatest, the most incredible love of all, that love is here with God. Prabhupada writes in the purport, he says, having equal vision is actually coming to the level of God. Krishna has equal vision. He embraces the calf, the cows, not only the gopis. Gopis are the cowherd girls who live in the village. For him, the gopis, the calf, the cows, or anyone in his village of Vrindavan who has come to serve him, they are all equal to him. Somebody wants to serve Krishna as a calf. Somebody wants to serve him as a cow. Somebody wants to serve him as a gopi. Gopis, again, the cowherd girls. Somebody wants to serve Krishna as a cowherd boy. Somebody wants to serve him as his father, and somebody wants to serve him as his mother. These are all different ways of loving. Every living entity has a unique way to love God, to love Krishna. But the central point is to love him. Kapila then continues. So he talks about loving all, being respectful and loving to all living entities. That's what he had said earlier. And now he says, to give the greatest respect to the Guru, to be compassionate. So who's the Guru? Someone who teaches you about anything, but especially about God. He says, be compassionate to the poor and make friends with those who are equals. So be compassionate to the poor and make friends with those who are equals. So it doesn't mean you have to do the same with everyone, your friends and the people who you are compassionate with. You don't have to. It's not like we are compassionate and loving with everyone. We are kind and generous with everyone, and yet not everybody has to be your friend or your buddy. That's not necessary. It's not that all people are brought into your house now because you're being equal with equal vision. No, there can be a certain discernment as well. But at a core, there needs to be a love and respect for all creatures, including the animals, by the way. That includes the fish in the sea. That includes the animals, not just the cow, not just the dogs and cats, but all creatures. They all deserve to live. They all deserve a good life. And that doesn't mean that a grass-fed cow is somehow having a good life. No, she's going to be killed. So it may have been grass-fed, but they're going to be killed. They're going to be slaughtered and their life taken away, inappropriately or without their choice. It's not like the natural course of things. So then he continues, execute all activities under regulation and with control of the senses. Now, that's such an interesting point in today's time. Nobody wants to be regulated. Nobody wants to control their senses. They want to just enjoy their senses as much as possible. But what that does is it makes you weak. Why weak? Think about it. When you go to the army, they train you. And what does that mean? You can't be on your phone scrolling away all the time looking at Instagram or something. No, you got to learn to focus your attention and get good at your craft. The same with any martial arts, the same with any career, the same with university or college. The more you focus in on what you're doing, the better you get at it. So you've got to control your senses whether you like it or not. But in spirituality, a lot of folks misunderstand because they think spirituality is just this, hum-ho kind of thing. I can just kind of smoke my way there with marijuana or with ayahuasca or with whatever else I want to do. It's all part of ceremony and it's about learning to act under certain regulations, controlling the mind, controlling the senses, because the more your mind and senses are trained, the more they will cooperate with you and the more they will serve you rather than pulling you here and there and everywhere. So normally what is happening is our mind is pulling us everywhere. Our senses are pulling us in all different directions. But the more we train them, the more they become under our control, and now we can pursue the path that we want to go on, not where our senses are leading us. Then he says, always hear about spiritual matters and chant the name of God. I think that goes without. Because why? Because then you purify your mind. Because you want to control your senses, but you also need to, in tandem, do this. Hear about spiritual matters, develop a taste, develop that attraction we were talking of earlier. And as you do that, that will also help you further in controlling the senses and the mind. Then he says, be straightforward and simple in your behavior. Be non-envious and friendly to everyone. Again, these qualities develop naturally as we grow spiritually. One should endeavor for them, but one can use these also as landmarks to recognize how you are growing. Very often what happens in these New Age communities and modern day spirituality, there is no standard of what goalposts there are, what signs to look for, what symptoms exist in a person who is evolving spiritually. How do you know if you're growing or you're not spiritually, right? This is how you know. Through these kind of symptoms, you begin to understand, oh, and there is a difference. I used to be like this earlier, and now I'm like this. I have changed from within. That means your spirituality is kicking in and you are growing with it. Then he says, avoid the company of persons who are not spiritually advanced. This is very, very important. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to say the same thing. He would talk about associating with those who are spiritually advanced, making them your friends. So because when you're with them, you will hear more about spiritual things and less about mundane things. You will grow more, you will learn more, and you will advance more because you will see their example and you will see if they can do it, I can do it too. When one has fully developed these transcendental attributes, his consciousness will be completely purified. So this is what we're talking about. Your consciousness gets purified. What happens? Your mind becomes cleansed. Right? Chaitanya calls this Cheto Darpana Marjanam. The mirror of the mind is cleansed, and now you can see things clearly. Think of a dirty mirror, and then as you clean it, now you can see yourself clearly. So in much the same way, you're now able to see yourself, the true self, the soul, clearly. And you're able to exhibit its natural qualities in the world, rather than exhibiting the qualities of the mind or the qualities of whatever you were conditioned by and making that your default. So he says, when one has fully developed these transcendental attributes, his consciousness will be completely purified. And he will be immediately attracted to hearing my transcendental name and qualities. See, what happens when your consciousness is purified? You've come into your soul state. You're starting to live from your soul. And your soul loves to hear about God, the name and qualities and attributes of God. Because this is soul food. This is real soul substance. This is the nutrition for the soul. Just like material things are food for the mind and body, spiritual things are the food for the soul. Then he gives a lovely example. He says, as the chariot of air carries an aroma from its source. So the chariot of air carries an aroma from its source and immediately awakens your sense of smell. Similarly, one who constantly engages in bhakti or devotion can catch the Supreme Soul, who is equally present everywhere. So God is present everywhere. This is true. And yet, as you hear about him, you can have him now within your grasp. That which is everywhere is now here with you, in you. And that is an incredible shift that occurs within. He says, because Kapila himself is an incarnation of Vishnu, an incarnation of the Supreme Godhead. So he says, I am present in every living entity as the Paramatma, the super soul, the presence of God within every being. If someone neglects or disregards that super soul, that Paramatma everywhere, and engages himself in the worship of the deity in the temple, that is simply imitation. One who worships the deity of Godhead in the temples, but does not know that the same Supreme Being is situated in every living entity's heart, must be in ignorance, and is compared to one who offers oblations into ashes. He's like completely blowing it to pieces, right? Any idea that you have. So, I mean, this is talking about deity worship as you have in temples, in Hindu temples, but it could equally refer to someone who is going to the church, or is going to a mosque, or is going to any other place of worship. He says, if you don't see the Supreme Being situated in every living being's heart, then you must be in ignorance, and your offerings, your prayers, your worship is like making offerings unto ashes. Try to understand the gravity of this. Then he says, one who offers me respect but is envious of others and is therefore a separatist. Separatist means my way is better than your way. This is the disease of all religions. This is why there have been wars. This is why we have had so much of conflict between different religions. Why? Because they are separatists. One simple word. One who offers me respect but is envious of others and is therefore a separatist never attains peace of mind because of his inimical behavior towards other living entities. Similarly, if one is harming other living entities, killing them and eating them, it's the same thing. You cannot elevate your mind by that. The aggression that was imposed upon that animal, the fear and anxiety that it experienced, now goes within you. You will not grow spiritually. It doesn't work. It doesn't happen. Then he continues, one who worships my deities in the temple with proper rituals and paraphernalia, but is ignorant of my presence in all living entities, cannot please me. Listen very carefully. Cannot please me. Performing one's prescribed duty, one should worship the deity of the Supreme Godhead until one realizes my presence in his own heart and in the hearts of all other living entities as well. So this is the process now. You begin by performing your prescribed duties, as we've talked about, those that are your natural gifts. One should then worship God in some way, whether you do it in temple, church, mosque, doesn't matter, until one realizes the presence, my presence, God's presence in your own heart. This is the beginning. Now you have a direct experience of God. It's not a belief, it's not a faith, it's a direct experience. One realizes my presence in his own heart and in the hearts of all other living entities. That's why Christ says to love thine, it is said even in the Ten Commandments, to love thy neighbor as thyself. And right here you're seeing this thousands of years before it was even in the Ten Commandments. And it's not a question of being better or worse, just pointing out to you that this wisdom has existed and this is a core understanding that needs to be there. And I'm very glad it was reinforced. But in Christianity, in Judaism, everywhere else, it should exist. And I'm glad that it did. So it's not about making any comparisons or better or worse. Please, that's not my intent at all here. Then he goes on, as the blazing fire of death, I cause great fear to whoever makes the least discrimination between himself and other living entities. So ultimately, death comes to all of us. You may have discriminated, you may have thought yourself better, but the fire of death reduces you into ashes. It reduces you into nothing. So whatever sense of superiority you had, whatever sense of being better than others that you had, I'm sorry, it's reduced to ashes. In the end, you get to see who you really are. And since we all come, or rather are reduced to ashes, let there be no sense of being better than anyone else. We are all from dust to dust, ashes to ashes, right? Something like that. That's where we come from and that's where we belong. No one is great. No one is superior. No one is better. Kapila continues, therefore, through charitable gifts and attention, as well as through friendly behavior, and by viewing all to be alike, one should please me, who abide in all creatures as their very self. So I abide, he's saying God abides in all creatures as their very self. The true self. It's not that God is that he's the body, or of course he's the source of that as well. But the true presence of God that we're talking about is their self. Every creature has a soul. Even the trees, even the plants, even the animals. They all have a soul. So he says, through charitable gifts and attention, as well as through friendly behavior, and by viewing all to be alike, one should please me, who abide in all creatures as their very self. Living entities are superior to inanimate objects. Animals with developed consciousness are still better. And better still are those who have developed sense perception. So he's going through a whole sequence of things, but I think I wanted to go deeper into what he was trying to talk about here, and I went into the purport by Prabhupada. Prabhupada writes beautifully. He writes here, a living organism is sometimes manifested even in stone. Experience shows that some hills and mountains grow. This is due to the presence of the soul within that stone. Above that, the next manifestation of the living condition is development of consciousness, and the next manifestation is the development of sense perception. In the Moksha Dharma section of the Mahabharata, it is stated that trees have developed sense perception, that they can see and smell. We know by experience that trees can see. Sometimes in its growth, a large tree changes its course of development to avoid some hindrances. This means that a tree can see. And according to the Mahabharata, the tree can also smell. This indicates the development of sense perception. Among living entities, so Kapila continues now, among living entities who have developed sense perception, the human beings are the most developed. Among human beings, the society which is divided according to guna and karma, the varnashram system, which was that people would follow the qualities that they naturally have and work according to that, which is, I think, really there all over the world, right? Is the society, and in that society, the spiritually intelligent or the Brahmins are the best. So again, let's be very clear. When he talks about a society that is divided according to quality and work, it means that you do your work, but you do it without being attached to the results of that work, and you do it as an offering unto God. That is an evolved society. And in that society, the spiritually intelligent or the teachers or the Brahmins or the priests are the best. Among the Brahmins, one who has studied the Vedas is the best, and amongst them, one who knows the actual meaning and purport of the Veda is the best. Better still are those who can dissipate all doubts. Better than such a person is one who strictly follows the Brahminical principles, and better than him is one who is liberated from all material contamination. Better than that person is a pure devotee who executes devotion without expectation of reward. In other words, the highest level is to serve God without expectation of reward. Whatever you're doing, whether that is a prayer, whether that is a service of some kind, you're cooking for God, or you're speaking about God, or you're whatever it is you're doing for God, that you do it without expectation of reward. Not that I'll do this for you and what can I get in return? Like, what's in it for me, huh? Right? No, not that spirit, not that way. There is no greater person than he who has no interest outside of God. So he says the greatest person is one who has no interest outside of God, and who therefore engages and dedicates his activities, his life, and everything unto me without cessation. Now I know you and I are not there, but it's wonderful to know where we want to get to. So along with seeing our symptoms of growth is also know where the destination is. And this doesn't just happen by forcing yourself, nor does it happen by just going and joining an ashram or becoming a monastery, but actually it happens as you develop a taste and attraction. This happens naturally. It's an important part to understand. Then he continues, such a perfect devotee offers respects to every living entity because he is under the firm conviction that the Supreme Being has entered the body of every living entity. The devotee who applies the science of devotion and mystic yoga in this way can achieve the abode of the Supreme Person through bhakti. So ultimately such a person then gets to go back to be with God. The Supreme Godhead has an eternal form and at the same time resides in everyone and is everywhere, and all his activities are spiritual. So this is now referring to the nature of God, has an eternal form, at the same time resides in everyone and is everywhere, and all his activities are spiritual. Time, which causes the transformation of the various material manifestations, is another feature of the Supreme. Anyone who does not know this will be afraid of time. Vishnu, the Supreme Godhead, is the master of all masters. He enters everyone's heart. He is the support of everyone, and he causes every being to be annihilated in the end. No one is dear to him, nor is anyone his enemy or friend, but he gives inspiration to those who remember him. Those who reject him become bewildered by the material energy and are ultimately destroyed. The purport Prabhupada writes, Harim vina nasritim taranti. No one can be saved from the repetition of birth and death without the help of the Supreme. And that's really how it is. Out of fear of him the wind blows, out of fear of him the sun shines, the rain pours forth showers, the rivers flow, and the ocean never overflows. Because of him the fire burns, the trees, creepers, herbs, and seasonal plants and flowers blossom and fructify, each in its own season. Under his supreme control the host of heavenly bodies shine, the planets accommodate innumerable living entities, and the universe expands endlessly. The demigods in charge of the modes of material nature carry out the functions of creation, maintenance, and destruction. Everything animate and inanimate within this material world is under his control. Eternal time, which has no beginning or end, is his representative. It carries on the work of creation by bringing one individual into existence from another, and likewise it dissolves the universe by destroying even the Lord of Death, Yamaraj. Okay, so with that we'll end, and I'd like to take a look at any questions you all might have and see what's been brewing in your mind as you've been hearing all of this. Trust me, this work is a labor of love. It takes a lot of time to simplify what is written in the Bhagavatam and to present it to you here. So I do hope you'll take the time to understand it and to share your comments. Okay, Cece writes here, I like this. We live to learn and evolve. Over many lifetimes, we will eventually reach liberation. Many place much pressure on themselves to seek oneness, but loving everything is what connects us to one. Oh, Cece, wow. Loving everything is what connects us to oneness. See, oneness otherwise, I have never heard it put so beautifully. I thank you so much for this insight. When you say oneness, what do you mean? People use this term a lot in today's time. Oh, we're all one. Really, are you treating everyone the same as you treat yourself, as you treat God? No. You see better and worse. You see someone as higher and lower depending on how much money they've got or how much power they have or how much, you see. You don't see with the same eyes the homeless person and the multimillionaire. But indeed, they're all the same. If you truly believed in oneness and if you walked your talk, you would not discriminate against anyone. That love that you show to all beings is the love you show to God. I'm not saying that God is only in them, but God is there in three forms, as the Vedas point out. He is present in everything, that is the entire creation, in every atom of the creation. He is present in every one. And ultimately, he is present as a being. But you cannot condemn the world or condemn people or creatures or harm them and think that you're going to love God or you're going to go to God. No way. If you have not opened your eyes to see the truth and the truth of Him being everywhere, in everything, in everyone, and you're not ready to go to God. I've often said to people, if you go in your present state of consciousness and you go to heaven as they want to go to heaven, you'll turn heaven into hell. Because you'll discriminate there, you'll be a separatist there, you'll form camps out there, you'll be part of this sect or that sect or the other sect. What does it take, what will it take for all of us to unite under one banner and say we're all here to love God? And we, even if we love God and even if we accept that there is a God, are no better than the atheist, are no better than this person who rejects God. We love them all. Not just the people, but all creatures as well. Thank you, Cece, for what you've said here. If I have helped you in any way come closer to God, that is by His grace. I really know one thing, and that is I am not qualified for this. There are many who are far more learned, far more experienced, far more disciplined than I am. But I know that the only one quality I have is that once God got hold of me, I never let Him go. I've held on. I've trusted and I've let Him guide me. And so when I speak to you today, it is with a deep passion and a deep conviction that comes from having lived these teachings. I can't say I'm perfect and I can't say that I've done it all and I've achieved it all. And that's all right. Whenever that has to happen, it will happen in due course. The mind will be cleansed. I trust the process. You know, it's like you go into a shower and you trust that as you're doing what you do, the cleansing will happen. Similar to when you're trying to heal your body, and the same when you're trying to heal your soul. Little by little, as you do the process of listening and chanting and speaking about and remembering Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, and worshipping God, little by little, the cleansing starts to take place. And you become completely, He, by His grace, lifts you up. It's not something that you do yourself. And at least that's been my experience. It's not because of some hard work I've done or some intense meditation. It has all been by grace. And I know it's the same for you, for all of us. If you look at it, the gopis who were the closest to Krishna, the cowherd girls of Vrindavan, they were the closest to Krishna. They were the dearest to Krishna. They were the most evolved lovers of God. And they were uneducated. They had no knowledge, even perhaps they couldn't even read or write, perhaps, I don't know. But they were uneducated women. They had no great achievement of any kind. But they had one thing, and that one thing was the most powerful thing of all. Their heart was 100% with Him, 1000% with Him. They were in love, like madly in love. And there is no greater power than the power of love. That's what you get to learn on this path. Thank you, Cece. Thank you. I can only say to you that God has been everything to me. I say it even to my partner. I already have someone I'm in love with, and that is God. So I hope you understand. This is Valentine's Day, but my love affair with God has been there for at least the most major part of this life. And that love affair will always be there as part of who I am. So accept me with my beloved. It's just a wonderful thing. And I ask all of you to have this. Don't just believe, don't just listen, don't just go from a place of intellectual understanding, But really, let your heart melt. As you hear these things, let your heart melt. And as your heart melts, know and allow it to become one with God. To be one with God is to be unified. That is the intent of yoga. Yoga means oneness. It means union. And union occurs best when there is love. Right? You can say you and I are one, but when two people make love, there is a union there that goes beyond all other things. And if that union is then linked with emotion and with the heart, that is even better. Now you've got physical, you've got emotional. And if their minds are as one, that is even deeper. But on this path, we go to the next level. The soul is part of that. And when the soul becomes part of that love affair, there's no going back. You develop a taste of something so sweet, so sublime, so pure, that nothing in this world compares to it. And because of that, you don't want to let go. There's nothing that compares. Thank you. Thank you, all of you. Thank you, Cece, for all your acknowledgement. Thank you for your love. Thank you for all of you that are here. I love you, and I want you to know that all of you are loved deeply by God, and that there is no discrimination. Just as He loves all the pictures I showed you earlier, in the same way, you too are loved by God. And that God love is not conditional. It is unconditional. If you say, well, what is unconditional love? Where will I find unconditional love? This unconditional love has been with you all along. It was hiding right here in plain sight, right within your heart. Open up to it, and you will experience it. Just start with the idea that I am loved unconditionally. God loves me. Krishna loves me unconditionally. And then just open up. As you open up to the idea, you will start to experience it. You will start to feel it. And you will feel it through nature first, and then through all creatures. Just keep your mind out of the door, out of the place. Like Picasso said once, he says, when I go to paint, I leave my mind outside the door. So leave your mind outside the door, and then just feel with your heart. This love is everywhere. This love is within you, all around you, and it is coming from God. So if you want to experience unconditional love, if you want to celebrate this day, this Valentine's Day, every day and everywhere, whether you are single or with a partner, it doesn't matter. You can feel this and experience this always. I assure you of that. This has been my experience, and you too can have that gift. Make it yours now. It's up to you. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you next week.